Hey there, super sober heroes. It's your host, Sober Steve, the podcast guy, here with 1026 days of sobriety. For the last time in an intro, yes, after this, I will be caught up and ready to take on the world as I do some traveling and coaching and growth to help improve this podcast going forward. But with these intros ahead, I am still happy to report that there's many more things that I could think of that I'm grateful in my life for today. Most recently being the friendships I have, both new and old, coming together at Disco Drag Brunch in town in Sarasota this past Sunday. As of when I'm recording it, it was St. Patrick's Day weekend, so that will date it since this episode will come out quite a few weeks from now. But it was a great time where I was able to go with friends from my senior living world and the stage of my life before I made all these big, amazing, and wonderful changes back in October, November to level up my life and my sobriety. And in addition to being able to go with them to this event, I went with a friend that I was close with years ago that we've gotten back in touch with because of kickball. And I was able to know other people from between my church and Project Pride and kickball there. And it was nice being part of the queer community in Sarasota. I know that I've shared how that can kind of come and go at times, depending on your perception of it, because we're not a giant big city with these huge organizations, that have events on a weekly or a daily basis. And we don't have like a huge gay club necessarily to call our own, but there are queer things going on in Sarasota, and there are queer people who are awesome that I'm connecting with. And it was a great time being able to celebrate both the old friendships and the new friendships together while also enjoying an amazing drag performance. So with that, I am going to head over a little bit earlier than normal into my interview with Andy that I recorded over this past weekend. And the reason why I'm doing that is because a lot of the extra stuff that I'm sharing about or reflecting on, I'm actually going to reflect on after the episode interview, because it was information that he really got me thinking. After a couple other interviews, I began really noticing a trend with him that I wanted to dive into a little bit more. So make sure you enjoy this amazing interview with Andy, where we cross the space-time continuum of recording in both the Eastern time zone and the New Zealand time zone, and enjoy it. And then stick around afterwards while I reflect on some research I've done since my interview with him. So enjoy, and I'll see you soon. Hey there, super sober heroes. It's your host, Steve, here with Andy. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing well. I am glad that we were able to get our wacky time zone differences sorted out and get this recording set up.
I know. It's because I
You,
live in the future. It's because I'm
yes, you
time.
do.
I
You
actually live
are.
in the future.
Yeah, I know. It is right now tonight where you are. So how did today go over there in New Zealand?
Oh, it was fine. I had a photo shoot and did content creation, and yeah, it was really cool. Got to collab with heaps of really awesome other creatives. So yeah, it was awesome. Then I'm making
Ex-
my job.
Yeah. Yes, if you were watching, you get to see Andy working on one of his projects while we do the recordings. So it it is
Focus.
fun watching the crocheting. I know that I've tried to do that. I got a Woobles kit sometime in early sobriety, and I tried those, and it was not for me right now, but I love that you are doing it so efficiently as you can talk.
I like it really helps me focus on things or think, or if I have to or else I get super distracted. But I started this when I got sober,
Hmm.
so it's something I've done since I've been sober. I never used to do it before.
Oh, well, I can definitely see how that helped. I know that keeping my hands busy has always been something I've always been doing something with my fingers while I'm talking with someone or in class to help me focus. But when I got
Really?
sober, Lego did it for me. So I see
Lego.
crocheting did it for you. Yeah, I built so many Lego my first few months of sobriety. We have extra rooms in the house dedicated to them now. It was a very expensive hobby.
Oh wow! I did Lego for a bit. I made the flowers. You know those flowers?
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, and then I've got a group, but I got over it, so it's just sitting in my wardrobe. I
Excellent.
need to get back into it.
Yeah. Well, what would you say is your favorite part of being sober today?
Today, I think my favorite part of being sober today is like hitting the milestone you know, like that I needed to hit, and then everything's just gets better. Like every
Hmm.
day, my routines just are more ingrained. I've got like really awesome friends. I don't have to explain myself heaps, you know, like if we go out or that people just know. They
Yeah.
just, you know, if I'm at the pub, they just know. Like I actually have friends of mine now that will watch bartenders, especially if we're in a bar like that we don't really know, and they'll watch them when they're pouring my drinks. Just you know how sometimes you're kind of like la 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 la.
Yeah, I've heard like experiences of people who like accidentally were served alcohol because the waiter just was on autopilot or the bartender didn't get the message and stuff. So I love that you have people looking out for you like that. I know that, yeah, coming out, it was almost like a whole other coming out experience coming out as an alcoholic. So it's nice being on the other side of that and just having everyone kind of know.
Yeah, it was cool. It's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's every day's just got better. Like you know, the beginning part of it was shit, I think, but it just gets better and better and better. Like it can't, you know, yeah. It's just I can't imagine drinking or taking drugs now. Like I just
Yeah.
can't. I almost want to save everybody who you know like I'm like oh let me help you.
Yeah, it's certainly hard because I know that until like the very end when it got really, really bad, even when people would try and help me, I wasn't ready for
Oh,
help. I had to get to the point where I needed to ask for it. But tell us a little bit about your journey to sobriety and what that was like.
uh, so I started taking drugs and drinking when I was really young. So I would have been like I think I started drinking when I was about 12 or 13, and then taking drugs when I was 14, 15, and then yeah, I just it was always a part of my life, like always. Go
Hmm.
to, you know, just I couldn't imagine my life not. It was just normal. But then the older I got, the more kind of I wouldn't say I even got into it. It was just I needed more and more and more to get the same effect, right?
Hmm.
And because I was diagnosed late ADHD, like I didn't know I had it till I was well, maybe like just after COVID, I went to the doctor because I was feeling like you know. But anyway, yeah, and so it just got worse and worse and worse. Like, well, I didn't think it was getting worse, but it was. And then I traveled the world and I thought, and I kicked drugs for quite a long time, but alcohol was still like a huge part of my life. And I would like, I've watched some of your podcasts about where you say, you know, like everything you did, you were thinking about like how you were going to drink, like how
Hmm.
alcohol was going to fit into everything, right?
Yeah.
Like even for me, like flying around, like because New Zealand's in the middle of nowhere, so you have to get flights for like 16 hours to
Hmm.
get certain places. And I was like, how am I gonna get enough alcohol before I get on the flight, and
Hmm.
then space out enough alcohol during the flight? You know, like it was just all consuming. But I was still turning up to work, still, you know, doing well. And then it just got to a point. I lost a friend of mine, and I just started really drinking like on my own, drinking bottles of vodka a day and just being really messy. And then the drugs started again, and yeah. And then something, you know, like you just have like that one horrendous experience, and you're kind of like, far out, I need to sort my shit out.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I can definitely relate to a lot of it. I remember even growing up in the States, knowing you were from the UK, there was a show that I would watch that from the UK called Skins, and it was basically a whole bunch of like teenagers just like doing lots of crazy drugs, and I was like, that's so cool. That I was
That's
like, no,
how we
that's
grow
not
up.
cool.
That's how we grow up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in the 90s. I'm 38. So when I was growing up, like taking going to raves, you know, we could go to the pub like when we were like 16, 17, if we just go to our local, like, yeah, it's real common.
Mhm.
But I think there comes a point where, you know, you are the crazy one. And that's just my whole identity was like, so I used to get called Patsy for a long time. Oh my God, if my friends saw this now
Mhm.
from AbFab because she was always
Yeah.
drunk. And like I used to, and everyone was like, oh, it's just Patsy. He's just, you know, he is who he is. But looking back, like that's kind of sad because it was just because I was always wasted.
Yeah.
I'm disconnected from the world.
Hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned how hard it was at first or difficult. What tools or skills did you use when you were getting sober to help get you there and keep you there?
Oh, so I was at, you get medically, they do the thing with the medicine to stop you from, you know, your body from crapping out.
Yeah.
So I had all that.
Hmm.
And then what happened after that? I don't know about you, but my memory is like from then is quite hazy at times.
Hmm.
Like I have to really
Yeah.
think about what happened because like my brain was so like screwed up,
Hmm.
like from coming off everything. So hang on. Oh, and then I went to see this counselor once a week. It was free through the hospital. She was an Irish girl, and so we connected quite well. But she was an Irish drug and alcohol counselor in New Zealand, so I really connected with her. She really understood like where I'd come from, my background, and all of that. And yeah, she helped me through the initial part. And then what did I do? And then I just stayed sober, and I was lucky. I had good friends that were like, that had kind of I had older friends. So in our friendship, my friendship group here, there's like a lot of expats, like,
Hmm.
but like a lot of them are in like some of my really close friends here, and they're in their early or mid 50s now. So they've had a lot of life experience, and they've
Hmm.
like had seen, and they're just like wise old gays. They just gave me wise old gay advice, like you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, in addition to having just great friends in general, did you have other sober people in your life that were able to help kind of walk you through that?
Nah,
No?
nah, not to start with.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to think if I had anyone who was. Oh, I had one friend. Yeah, no, I did have one guy. He was sober. He went to Australia. He moved to Australia though, but he would come round now and again, and we would talk it out. But I always thought it was really important for me to still. I got rid of a lot of friends
Mhm.
that they naturally dropped off, and then the friends that was left, they were always around, but I didn't realize that they were bowing out of parties earlier, and like maybe not inviting me for dinners because they knew that I wouldn't really eat and I'd just get drunk. So they were always there and they were always looking out for me. I just didn't give them enough time. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
Like I was giving the wrong people the time, and these like I mean, oh, it's just awful. I would say they were like my geeky mates. Like they would play Catan, and I thought they were boring at times and stuff like that. But actually, now it's like we play Catan and sit around on Sundays and have like potlucks, and you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome. And then I know you mentioned how in your active addiction, how losing a friend caused a lot of grief. I understand that's also something that you went through recently as well.
yeah, yeah.
You,
So losing my mate initially, I think kickstart my friend before kickstarted the alcohol, like really ramped it up. Like the way he
Mhm.
passed away was not cool. And then my friend who at Christmas was like my best friend,
Mhm.
in the world. He wasn't sober, David. Like he's Irish, and we moved to New Zealand at the same time, and we actually met each other on Paddy's Day. So it's ironic that we're doing this today because this is really the day that me, him, and my other friend met. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I was thinking about it today, and he passed away at Christmas, and he was a big advocate for me to not drink.
Mhm.
So much so that he didn't speak to me for a whole year, and I don't remember him not talking to me.
Mhm.
So he just kind of watched me but he said he couldn't watch me do it to myself. So and then he came back when I got sober. But yeah, he passed away at Christmas, and it was horrible.
Mhm.
And I thought I would, before it happened, I always used to say, if anything ever happened to him or our other friend, that would be it. I'd probably be off the I'd be off the wagon, like it's probably one of the only things I could think of that would really tip me over the edge.
Yeah.
And then it fucking happened.
Mhm.
And I was like, far out. So I definitely had moments, not while it was happening, but once the dust had all settled and I was on my own. Like,
Mhm.
when someone dies, everyone kind of, you're all together a lot, and
Yeah.
then yeah, and then because he was Irish, his family came over and took his body back, and then we had like 3 memorials for him, and once that had all happened and the memorial was over and I was on my own, that's when I started to really like think about drinking a lot. And I actually went to a pub and brought a drink and sat with it in the like corner of a pub and cried like, and people probably thought I was fucking nuts. And then I just like was like, do I really want to ruin my life? Like, is this really what he would want for me? And I just left it and got up and walked out. But that's
Wow.
when I realized that I was like, because when it was happening, I think people were worried I was going to fall off the wagon as well as mourning him. And I was trying to like make sure everyone knew that I was fine. Like, don't worry about me. Like, I've got this. And I suppose I did have it, but then when I was on my own, I don't think I was like personally processing. Do you ever name the alcohol demon? Do you name him? Mine's called Gary.
Mine does not have a name like Gary. I know that I've used some interesting adjectives in therapy and coaching that they've called me out on for the way that I talk about my disease, but I've never named it like that. But yeah.
Oh yeah, so mine's called Gary,
Mhm.
and I name him Gary. He's
Mhm.
my he's the well, I used to call him the alcohol demon.
Yeah.
And so he was having a field day.
Mhm.
He was like, "Yay, this is my in." So I had to have a little word with him. I think I didn't realize how much he'd snuck in, and
Mhm.
yeah, like yeah. But grief is grief, right? Like, it's passing, and now I just want to like do well, and I know that he would be proud of me, and you know,
Yeah.
good
I
for
mean,
that.
so oftentimes that's the type of thing that a lot of us will think when we enter the rooms, or start getting sober of how could I get through the passing of this loved one or the end of this
Mm,
relationship or this huge change in my life. And thank you so much for being open to even sharing about how far it went for you. But from that moment that you like walked away from that drink in the pub, what did you do differently to kind of get that help or support that you might not have been willing to accept before when you were saying everything's fine?
what did I do? I think I told people.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that when I hide things, that's not good. Like, if I hadn't have gone and told my mate, my our mine and his other, there was 3 of us. Like, what the gays are like. The three
Mm-hmm.
amigos, me, him, and Elliot.
Yeah.
And now there's just me and Elliot. But yeah, I rang him and I told him like what had happened, and everyone's like, "Why didn't you ring me?" I was like, "Well, because I wasn't thinking, or else I wouldn't have done it." Everyone. And then I don't know. I don't go to the rooms.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have them in New Zealand. Like, we don't have. We used to have like a gay one, but it was once a week. It's not a very big country,
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people that are sober. I've got a lot more sober queer friends now, because since I've become sober, and because I was such a messy bitch, people have been like, "Oh fuck, if he can do it," and then like, reach out and say, "Oh, Andy, how did you?" I was like, give them the direction, the places to go, and yeah, I've got quite a few sober friends now, and we kind of just get together and talk a lot. And
Yeah.
we actually, we all go to the same parties. Like, this, it's tiny here.
Yeah, it definitely helps going to when you go out to parties and things. I've learned like having someone sober, even if you're not like buddied up with them the entire time, just knowing that there's someone else in the room who won't be drinking, it makes you feel less alone.
Take a pregnant girl. Just take your
Uh,
pregnant. Just be like, hey,
yeah,
do you want to go to a party?
yeah. Most of my female friends are lesbians or past the age of having children, so it won't apply
Oh,
to me.
okay,
But
okay,
yes,
okay.
that
Oh
would
no,
be good
I've got.
advice as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like, for me, being sober has been quite a journey. But I
Mhm.
look at other sober people, and like, you listen to their stories and stuff, and you think, far out, that's like sober plus.
Hmm.
I've got my plus, but you're like, to me, yours is like, wow, that's so, And so I suppose like sharing and doing this kind of stuff and, being open with each other, it does help. For a long time, I didn't have any kind of support. I just relied on myself.
Yeah, I think that so
And get
oftentimes
good.
we're drawn to just say like I can do it. It's not a problem. I was always raised with the mindset that being able to get through things or get over things by yourself means that you're stronger than if you had to ask for help, that it's almost a
Yeah,
sign of weakness. And so having to
yeah,
learn that as an adult in my sobriety, at least, that I'm strongest when I'm asking for help has been certainly a flip from the way that I was raised.
yeah. I still don't really know how to. I still don't like asking for help. Like I still like to think I can do it on my own. But when you've got good friends around you that have known you since from addiction into sobriety, they know. Like
Hmm.
they're like, "What's going on, bitch?"
Yeah.
Like, "What's going on with you?" And
Yeah.
like being
And
in that, like we don't fuck around. Like we're like, "What the fuck is going on?"
yeah.
It's not soft. No one's. It's not a soft ask.
Yeah. And in addition to having some sober friends that have you found locally, we also had the pleasure of meeting online. How did you get into or connected to a sober community online?
Just googled it. I think Sober Babes. Do you know Sober Babes?
Hmm.
I brought his cup.
Yeah, I have a cup. I have a shirt that I wear out sometimes. So yeah.
He is a yeah. I loved his page because it was like, yeah, just because we're sober doesn't mean that we have to lose like being bad bitches, right?
Hmm.
So that was the first page, your page, obviously. I really like that guy. Remember, I texted you about, messaged you about that wee guy you had on. He was fascinating.
Oh yeah, I've had
The
some
older guy.
amazing guests. Yes.
I watched his. I really, really like. I really enjoyed. I found it. I just find it fascinating, and I think it's so important. Like when you get sober, right? The different generations and why and what has happened to them and the different things and the way the community like sort of deals with us. Not
Yeah,
deals
I
with us.
definitely.
Is that a bad
Yeah,
way of saying it?
no, it makes sense. I mean, I've loved how it seems like we all have different specific things that happened during our stories, depending on what was going on in the world or how things have changed from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts into now. And that's why I love having people of different lengths of recovery, because I have a lot of people on that have maybe just less than a year. And then I have
Oh,
some
okay.
people on that have decades and decades. And so you get to
Yeah.
see, though, at the end of the day, no matter whether someone's telling their story about getting sober in the 90s or getting sober in 2024, a lot of times we're able to all identify with the feelings that we're all having, even if the specifics of where we were or what we were doing might have been a little different depending on the times.
Yeah. 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 Because listening to him, it was like, wow, that would have been rough.
Hmm.
It's like you think you've got it tough, and then you listen to people, and you're like, far out.
Yeah.
Like it's not. This is what I mean. Like you can be happy about your day and your sobriety, and the fact that you just have to walk 10 minutes to work, and there's a beach right there, and you can't really, can't complain.
Yeah.
You can, but yeah, I think traveling's a big one as well. When you're going traveling and stuff and being sober, that's hard.
Is it still hard? Because I know that you said traveling beforehand was so difficult with the mental gymnastics of how you can drink through the
Oh,
flights. How is traveling now sober?
where have I been since I've been sober? Australia. I think it's fine because, like, with Instagram, you
Mhm.
can. So if I came to the States, right? Like, I've never been, but I'm pretty sure if I decided I wanted to go to like Chicago or someplace, I could jump online or message someone who I knew was sober and be like, "Where do you go? Who can you put me in touch with someone?" That's why your kind of page is quite good. I could just stalk your page and find someone.
Yeah,
Be
I'm
like,
sure at
"Hey,
this point
where do
with
I
all
go?"
my guests, there'll be someone wherever you're going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, well, where do I go? Like, do you want to go for dinner or just connect with people in a different way? I'm not a huge fan of going to gay bars.
Mhm.
I think because I spent so many years in them, like from like 16 to when did I stop going? I haven't stopped. I'll still go, but I was in there every night when I was a kid, like just and then I just kind of got over it. Like I don't, you can't hear people, you can't have a good conversation all the time. Like it's just about dancing, which is nice, but I think art galleries and cafes and like that kind of stuff is probably more where I'm at. But I thought I wasn't like that, so I
Mhm.
fought against it hard.
Well, I'm glad you've embraced it today.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your story. It's been a pleasure, and we'll have to have you back. But in the meantime, how can listeners find you if they wanted to connect on Instagram or online?
Oh, just on my Instagram.
I will put your in the show notes so that people could follow you. Okay.
Yeah, that's all good.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
You too.
All right. And back to
Ta-da.
you, future Steve. And good luck on your blanket.
Ta.
Hey there, welcome back, Super Sober Heroes. It's Steve. And yes, during the interview, especially if you were watching, you really got to see Andy's ADHD and how he was able to knit the entire time he was talking. And it just made me think of so many of the different ways that I display my symptoms of ADHD and how I was diagnosed in college, which is later than most, but it was before I got sober, but it was like untreated and I never took medication for it. And so I did some research that I thought was funny or interesting because recently there was J9 who talked about their ADHD diagnosis and sobriety. We had Chad talk about it recently, and then Andy talks about it. And I'm seeing all these interviews I've been having recently talking about an experience that I can somewhat relate to, although it happened somewhat out of order. And upon doing some research, I found this great article at addictions.com that I will give you the highlights from so that you don't have to read it. Or if you want, I'll be sure to cite it in the show notes so you can read it as well if you'd like, with all the extra details and the super sciencey stuff that I'm trying to make sound in a way that makes sense for me, at least. So what I really found interesting is that 8.4% of children and 2.5% of adults are estimated to have ADHD. But meanwhile, when you look at addicts, 25% of people in recovery have a diagnosis of ADHD, which is a lot more than 8.4%. So it seems like we generally have it. Again, I'm not sure the science behind the correlation between the two in terms of the why. I am here to report that with the statistics, though, there definitely is something there. And it could be very likely the way that we try and self treat because we don't have the diagnoses or we don't have the medication required to help tune it off. So we end up searching for other ways like alcohol to help turn things down. At least that's what my experience was like. 40% of children with ADHD, I also read, use alcohol, while 22% is the average of youths using alcohol that don't have the ADHD diagnosis. So it shows that even from a young age, and even with having a diagnosis, that you can be more likely to be drinking alcohol. And as your alcoholism progresses, often I guess so too does the chances that we'll be diagnosed with ADHD, because 25% of people in recovery having a diagnosis, that's 1 in 4. That's a very large percent of people if that statistic it translates to the way that I see it. And it just seems recently, at least with my guests as they're talking about it, that it definitely does, because about 1 in 4 guests that I'm talking to has been able to relate to that recently. The science that I do understand is that when you have ADHD, one of the side effects or things that happens with it is that you have a dopamine deficiency, and dopamine being like your happiness thing. You have trouble controlling that. You want to make it feel better, and we tell ourselves that alcohol can help that. For those of you who are still listening who are like, this is all sounds kind of interesting and maybe I have ADHD, apparently there are 2 types. I know of hyperactive impulsive ADHD is the one that I have the most symptoms generally, with the symptoms including fidgeting, difficulty staying seated. I'm shaking my left leg as we speak, and I do that in most meetings. Running or climbing when inappropriate, I feel is more of a childhood thing, but I mean, I can definitely, there are times where in the middle of the day I would go running if I could. And always being on the go, I definitely, when I am focused and in the zone, get like that. Talkativeness, I mean, I'm a podcaster. Hello. Interrupting conversations or blurting out answers is something that I've learned to control myself with, but it definitely was an impulse, especially with young little Steve, just like shouting out the answers in class all the time. My teachers would hate me, and difficulty waiting in line. That's why I pay for the fast pass today. And intruding on others, I try not to do now in sobriety. But there's also the inattentive ADHD, which I can also have some of these symptoms, which include struggling to pay close attention to details or making careless mistakes. I do my best to edit these episodes perfectly, but occasionally there'll be a careless mistake I missed along the way, and that I'll try and catch and fix on the backside, but guilty. Difficulty staying focused on tasks or activities. What was I doing? No, I'm kidding. But it happens. Inability to listen during conversations. That's one thing I love about my coaching like tools and practice is that I have learned as an adult how to actively listen, as I think that many of you have seen as the episodes have aired and as I've gotten more comfortable interviewing people. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that I have also learned how to listen more attentively and more actively. And but it's something that I had to learn. It's something that didn't come easy to me. And starting tasks and quickly losing focus, disorganization, and struggling to organize, avoiding or disliking tasks requiring sustained attention, often losing possessions. I always joke that it's because of all the alcohol and drugs that I did, but it could also be my ADHD as to why I'm constantly losing my shit. Not like my mental shit. I actually have that under control right now, and my emotional shit's pretty zen too. But I still lose my physical stuff all the time. ADHD. And forgetting to complete daily tasks like chores and errands. I have so many reminders and systems set in place so that that doesn't happen to me. But without those reminders, I would be lost without my smart devices and my different to-do lists and systems that I've created in place to build around me to help for the fact that I do have ADHD, and it sounds like it's something that a lot of people have experienced in recovery. So I hope you enjoyed so much of Andy's interview. You know, there was so much more that he was able to share, especially or about grief, that I found was very powerful, and I'm sure will help a lot of people. But the one thing that reached out to me, or that like left me chewing over the information long after I stopped recording and said goodbye to him, was the ADHD correlation between that and addiction. So if you have an ADHD diagnosis that you only got in sobriety, or if you just listen to all of these symptoms as well as the shares from these past couple episodes that have mentioned what their experiences was like, definitely recommend doing some research online into how to get treated for it, because I am not a doctor and I cannot diagnose you any more than I'm any other sort of expert that you should be taking life advice. These are all suggestions or ideas or things that I'm sharing with you that I found online that I will sort or cite so that you can verify and investigate yourself. But it is interesting and I'd love to talk about it more. So you can always reach out to me. My DMs are always open, as they say online. You can message me on Facebook. You can message or DM me on Instagram. I'm at Gay A Podcast pretty much everywhere. And you can also email me at steve@sobersteve.com. I appreciate you listening to another great episode of Gay A. And I do still have a few more interviews I've already recorded that I have coming up that I look forward to sharing with you when I return from Podcast Evolutions, and can update you on how that was in the intro. And until that time, just enjoy staying sober, friends. Bye.